What if it's just your biorhythms and not a complete existential crisis? Let's think about that, shall we? If you've ever been in a situation where one day you're absolutely full of energy and you can conquer the world, and then the next day, under similar circumstances, you've decided that you're utterly useless and a complete failure. Well, that means you're human. And all this stuff is going on in your body and mind, isn't it? And they're not disconnected. And just using that idea of biorhythms might be useful to counteract the bad days. But you need to know what we're talking about when we say biorhythms, because it's thrown around a bit. But there's a lot to it. So here we go. I'm Tricia Lewis. This is Self-Belief Unsquashed. Let's get curious. I'm actually going to quickly quote a line from this book that I've mentioned before, How Emotions Are Made, The Secret Life of the Brain by Lisa Feldman Barrett, because it's just so simple and so everyday. You'll all relate to this. When you feel bad, treat yourself like you have a virus, rather than assuming that your unpleasant feeling means something personal. Your feelings might just be noise. You might just need some sleep. I know it's not so dramatic as everything in the world is going wrong, but it's good advice. And I've really taken this on board because I'm very susceptible to having quite sudden mood swings around the sort of confidence and self-belief stuff. Take, for instance, the other day I was at the climbing wall, which is a great place to experiment with self-belief, and I just didn't feel like I was doing any climbs well. I thought, I'm not doing them elegantly, I'm not using good technique, I feel weak, I was getting into comparisonitis mode. Oh look, they're so much better, I'll never be as good as that. I had no oomph, etc. And of course, it all becomes a spiral because no oomph, you can't do the climb so well, you don't do the climb so well, you've got a general sense of oomph-lessness. Anyway, I went the day after, it was the next day, 2 days running, and felt completely different. I could approach anything. I was whizzing up here and there. It didn't matter if I could do it or not. I was approaching it like a challenge, which is how you should approach it. I felt I could go on for, hours. And there was nothing different about me. I was the same person. I hadn't done anything particularly weird the previous day. I hadn't woken up from a bad sleep, etc., etc. So what was it? I reminded myself yet again that the temptation to have fallen into the previous day, to have fallen into that spiral of self-doubt, that utterly squashing, useless thing of, I'll never be any good at this. I'm not cut out for this. Everyone else is better at this than me. What's the point? Is, something you need to avoid. To go into that self-doubt spiral is not helpful. You need to grab onto the edge pretty quickly, pull yourself back out, and remember things like biorhythms. So what am I talking about? Well, rather like I just quoted from that book, all sorts of things can affect your mood because your body and your brain are all connected. This is the thing that I've really had to get my head around. And if you are coming down with a slight virus, it could be a really low-level little cold that's just floating around. So you haven't necessarily thought, oh my God, I've got a full-on bout of flu. You haven't really registered it, but actually, when you think about it 2 or 3 days later, you realise, no wonder I felt like that 2 days ago. I was coming down with this cold, so my body was just in that state. And it could be that you perhaps did have a slightly broken night's sleep. It doesn't have to be anything dramatic. It could be the slightest little tipping thing of your default nice sleeping patterns that just put your body in a different mode. So when we talk about biorhythms, it's a kind of catch-all phrase really for things like the circadian rhythm and the other rhythms of day, hours, the fluctuations, the ebb and the flow. But it's not a fixed thing. If you're human, you will get them. But there's also obviously hormones, and it doesn't just apply to women, although it's kind of writ quite large for women. But it could also be just stress, because your body, that's a physical thing that your body is doing. It might feel like a mental thing, I'm stressed out, but actually, of course, your brain is reading it in cahoots with your body, and it thinks you're in danger, and so it creates more of certain chemicals. And I'm not going to get scientific, but there's this thing that Dr. Lisa Feldman Barrett talks about called body budgeting. And so your brain is connecting with your body, and it's thinking you need more of this, you need to run away, you're in danger, whatever it is. So it will boost certain things, and then if you don't actually need them because you're not actually in that danger, you're just a bit annoyed, then you're all out of kilter. Your sort of chemical stuff and everything is zhuzhing around out of kilter with what you need it to be. And if that is a continuous thing, if that goes on for too many days at a time, it really can cause some really low moods, and it can make you ill. So the whole point of what I'm saying is be more aware of these various quite undramatic things that can cause these fluctuations in your ability to cope with stuff, or to approach stuff, or your energy, or your resilience generally when it comes to dealing with annoying people at work, or the way you are more likely to quickly flare up in a tense situation in a relationship, or all sorts of stuff. And then the next day or 2 days later, you're in such a different place. And that's what you have to register. You think, yes, there wasn't anything really serious going on here. I didn't need to abandon my business that I've been growing for 3 years. I didn't need to, leave my relationship that I've been growing for 20 years. I was just having one of those days. My rhythms were all messing with me. And you might be able to pinpoint something specific, like sleep, maybe the weather. Now there's a thing, isn't it? I am definitely affected by the weather. I wouldn't say I'd got full-on seasonal affective disorder, which I know is a serious thing. And, you can buy certain lights and all the rest of it. Again, being aware of it is absolutely essential. But I am affected a bit by the weather. When the clouds are sort of low, I do feel a slight heaviness about my whole brain and body. When it's grey, when it's drizzly, sometimes. But then, equally, I can get weird when it's really, really sunny and beautiful, if I've got to be inside. And then I get into a sort of conflict inside me about, I want to be outside, I've got to be inside. And my brain will just be picking that up without any of the subtleties that I'm talking about here. It will just be seeing it as something is wrong, and it will try and boost certain things, reduce certain things, save on this, and and you're all out of whack again. So that's the big takeaway. Don't go. Anyway, don't let me sing. Don't make dramatic decisions based on what is really a temporary state. I'm not saying there aren't states that can go on for longer, and clearly I'm not a doctor, so if you need help and support, therapy or actual medication, that's another thing. But I'm talking about those quite regular fluctuations that we get. And we can really, this is the funny thing, of course, when you do have those low energy glitches, which is all part of this ebb and flow of your various rhythms, we make it worse because we then beat ourselves up for feeling so useless. And then that sends more messages that something's wrong, and on it goes. So get good with your spotting, get good with your reframing. Yes. It's like if you're nervous before a test or something, you kind of, I read a quote somewhere, get your butterflies to fly in formation. I think it's Joe Dispenza. I'll try and figure that out and put it properly under here. But I loved that image. Nerves. Yes, you're going to have the butterflies. They're going to be there. Don't try and capture them and put them in the bin. They will be there. What you need to do is get them flying beautifully in formation so they're not complete chaos all over the place. So it's a reframe. So don't deny, just observe, try and remember. So you try and grab on before you fall down the self-doubt spiral, and just be nice to yourself. And on those days where your biorhythms are giving you vibes, then yeah, don't beat yourself up. Be nice. Realise that you can come back to this tomorrow and you'll probably be a whole new person and you'll knock it out the park. So that's what I did when I went back the following day to the climbing wall. And that's why I go on about climbing, because it's such a good combo, mental, physical, mindset and strength and challenge and all the rest of it, and flow. Doesn't feel like flow when you're having one of those bad biorhythm days. So that's the point. You forget all of that. That goes all out the window. So yeah, it'll happen. Be nice to yourself. Be aware. Spot. Get better at spotting. And don't do anything dramatic on those odd days. Now, obviously, if day after day, week after week, you feel I'm in the wrong place, this isn't for me, I just don't feel happy here, then that's another thing. I'm not saying you've got to ignore all of that, but just beware of the blips, the fluctuations, observe. That's it. Stay curious and unsquashed and embrace your biorhythms.